All right, welcome to the short version. So for those of you who skip right past the long version, right to the short version, you just need to remember that you're recording the red. For those of you who did the long version, there was nothing for you to record specifically. You're just were listening for interest. Hopefully it was interesting, but if you were done and you just skip forward to this, we're still good. So in the short version, it is actually short. I think it's like 5 or 6 slides, and I'll talk more about the assignment that you'll be working on. Short version, here we go. So Cancer. Cancer is something that you defined already at the beginning of the lesson on your own. The interesting thing about Cancer is that there are multiple ways to describe it. The same way that I might describe a primate and a flower and a mushroom, and I say how different they are, and the only commonality is that they're all alive. Cancers are kind of like that as well. When I compare a lymphoma to a sarcoma to a blastoma, they all end in the same letters. They're all cancers, but they're all so different. They rely on different genes, and to fix one doesn't necessarily mean that we can fix the others. And that's why the cure for cancer is such a difficult task. But there are some generalities that we can apply. And two of those words you'll find here. Notice the title is in red, so you should know these two terms. Benign cancer and malignant. That's not a nice word. Benign cancer is typically the one that if you have to have a cancer, this is the one, you don't want cancer. But if you have to have a cancer, this is the one that is better. In a benign cancer, it's normally in a very specific region. And this is the one you can cut out. And as long as you cut out every single cell that causes the cancer in that spot, you're generally fine. Malignant cancer is when the cancer spreads to other parts of your body. So let's take a look at the next graphic to get a better understanding. So in this first slide, you'll see that a single cell becomes mutated. Notice how there's a red box in the corner. That means this is a slide that you should know. So a single cell becomes mutated. A proto-oncogene turns into an oncogene, or a tumor suppressor factor mutates. Right? Those are the two words that you learned in the very beginning on your own. I haven't used the terminology that much, but now I will. And then the mutated cell undergoes mitosis. And this is very interesting. So one of the sites that I like to use is a place called Sponge Lab. And I'll show you how to get to it. I would encourage you to make an account here. And so I'm going to go into this animation here. And this animation, what it does is it compares normal cells here on my left and cancerous cell division on the right. So it's going to undergo mitosis. So let's just do mitosis first off. Oops, start. So this is normal mitosis. You should recognize this, right? It's going pretty fast. So we got G1, normal cell, S, DNA replicates, G2, getting ready for cell division, prophase, the chromosomes condense, metaphase, they line up at the equator, anaphase, sister chromatids split, telophase, the cell splits, cytokinesis occurs, and it keeps on going. That's mitosis. That's a cell cycle with mitosis. Okay. So now let's take a look at this cancer. So in this graphic here, you'll see a normal cell on the left. It's all splitting, but look at the cancer cell. Look at the speed that it replicates. Look, here we have 4. By the time this is 4, this has got like 16. Notice how there's not enough room, right? These things, they're replicating at a good speed. They're shifting over, not going too fast. This is just replicating like crazy. There's not enough room, and all of a sudden you get this mountain of cells, and this mountain is called a tumor. It's ugly, and the cells all have the wrong shape. This is not pleasant. So this is what's happening here. This is if it's just in this area, it's benign. But as it spreads, it could spread down as well. So here's a benign mutation, mitosis. It's developing, it's getting some kind of specialization. There's certain genes that might start to get turned on that will cause blood vessels to supply this tumor growth with blood. And the moment that happens, you end up with malignancy. So a malignant tumor is when this tumor grows so large that it starts to dump the cancerous cells into the blood supply, or the cancerous tissue cause the development of blood vessels to grow from the cancerous growth to the blood vessels, and it's just not pleasant. So that's malignancy. Right? Now, what happens? So we know that proto-oncogenes and tumor suppressor factors are responsible, right? So it's a genetic problem. And any gene that codes for the cell to move forward and replicate an oncogene, or any gene that codes for a cell to stop replicating a tumor suppressor factor, if either one of those get mutated, then you have a problem. And so we know quite a few of these. Like you saw one of my last slides in the long version. There was this PowerPoint that showed you how they've mapped out the genetic sequence of all these different oncogenes, so we have a better idea of how to fight them and develop drugs for it. So here are some common ones. The BCL2, there's a HER2 I talked about with Gleevec, and there's some others. And so if you have the HER2, then you have a possibility of getting breast cancer, right? A lot of people with breast cancer have this gene. If you have this gene, does it mean you'll get the cancer? No. If you have the cancer, you have this gene though. So you have a decision. Now that we have the science to say, yes, you have the gene, now you have to make the decision whether or not you want to get your breast removed, or your prostate removed, or something else removed, your ovaries. These particular oncogenes and tumor suppressor factors are more susceptible to mutations than your classic traditional other genes. And if they do mutate, then a cancer will result. A mutated proto-oncogene is called an oncogene. It's a cancer-causing gene. So the question of the day that I'm probably going to give you tomorrow is, would you, knowing that you had this gene, have your breast removed, or would you, knowing you had the a prostate gene, if you're a male, have your prostate gland removed? Would you do that? If we look at this family history and we're looking at the BRCA gene, BRCA gene, you can see this through this pedigree, how the gene expressed itself as cancer, killing certain people or causing people to have breast cancer. And so they chose to have mastectomies or double mastectomies or not, and just see what happens. So it's a very interesting pedigree. I encourage you to look at that slide in the PowerPoint and just follow it along. Angelina Jolie, I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's an actress, an actor, and her grandmother and her mother both had the breast cancer, and she had a gene test and she found out she had the gene, so she decided to undergo a double mastectomy so that there'd be a less likelihood of having breast cancer. So that was her choice. Was it the right decision? You know, she had a family history of it, she had the gene for it, she defaced her whole body. Was that the right thing to do or not? Right? That's a personal choice. So what we're finding is that even though there was a period of time for about 50 years where there was actually no appreciation in the number of people that were saving for cancer. Like people with cancer, they were not living any longer. There are some people, there's a twin study, it's an excellent study, I don't have it on the PowerPoint here, and there's two twins. And one twin was diagnosed, let's say in 1995, and they were said you have 5 years to live, and they lived 5 years. And the other twin was diagnosed in 1999 and was told they had 1 year to live, and they lived 1 year. So in which case, what would you prefer? Would you prefer to know 5 years in advance and then have those 5 years of stress, or 1 year in advance? And one of the things we found was that having early detection of the cancer wasn't actually increasing life. We just had better ways of detecting the cancer. But in the past 10 years, we've had a lot of success with the gene therapies and the multiple rounds of various gene-targeted drugs, and now there's even new things on the horizon. Having said that, there are some cancers that are on the rise, and we have more incidence of it now. That multiple myeloma, that success story I talked about, not so successful anymore. Colorectal cancer, so that's in the colon, endometrial, gallbladder, kidney, pancreatic cancer, you've probably heard about Steve Jobs and what happened to him. These are cancers that seem to have more prevalence today than they did 15 years ago. So that's interesting as well. I encourage you to go to this link. You'll see an article, a little video that talks about these cancers, and in their prevalence in society. And we're not exactly sure why. Is it the pesticides that we're using? Is it the chemicals in our food? Is it the Teflon in our cooking equipment? Is it the fact that people are not as healthy as they once were, and people are just eating a lot of food and we're getting more obese? We're not sure. Now, this last slide here, it introduces you to some studies. So the Million Women study that was done in Britain and England, and this portal that's down in the States. So both of these, they provide you with some interesting information about the incidence of cancer. So I really like this portal here. If you look at this portal, they give you an opportunity to see how the cancer has developed. And we look at this bone marrow cancer, we look at this colorectal cancer, we look at this lung cancer. You can follow this portal to get data, hard data, and actually get the documents about the people who are infected with it, and it's a very detailed site. So this is a site that scientists and medical researchers will use to share information back and forth. Now, the video that I have you watching after this, it's going to be a part of Activity 4. Part 4. Not Activity 4. And so, Part 3 is self-explanatory. Just follow the link, follow the instructions in this activity here. If you decide to do it, you are basically going into a virtual lab and you're looking at some cancerous tissue, you're looking at some normal tissue, you're seeing how long it's in mitosis and how long it's in a cancerous stage, and you're doing a little bit of math and a little bit of graphing, and you're going to see if there's a relationship of cancerous cells in mitosis versus normal cells. It's a great lab. It's super easy to do. And after you've done that, you have these slides here. You're going to analyze these slides. These two are normal tissue. These two are cancerous tissue. This plate here has a bunch of normal and cancerous tissue for you to look at. Look at the differences. Once you've looked at those differences, then you're going to just observe. So cancerous tissue looks like this. Normal tissue looks like this. Write it down. And then you're provided with 6 slides. Of these 6 slides, 3 of them are normal. Whoops. Spelled that wrong. 3 of them are normal and 3 of them are cancerous. And so you have to figure out which 3 are normal and which 3 are cancerous after having completed those exercises. Right? This is just a completion activity. You're doing it to get a better experience. Engage yourself. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. But the product of the week. So at the end of every week, we're doing a product. So this week's product, you're going to watch Dear 16-Year-Old Me. So it's a video that has these older people, older than you, and what they've done is they've gone back, they've asked the question, if you could go back in time and talk to yourself, what would you say?
16-year-old me. Dear 16-year-old me.
Dear 16-year-old me.
Please don't get that perm. It's not...
Right? And you're going to watch that video. We're not going to watch it together. And then you're going to do something very similar. You're going to say, Dear 14-year-old me. And you can pretend that you are 18 years old, 40 years old, 60 years old, and you're talking back to yourself. The product you're going to create doesn't have to be a video. It could be a blog. It could be written. It could be an audio podcast. It could be anything that you guys would normally put on an a social media platform. And in this monologue, you must have specific information. 1, you must include the statement, Dear 14-year-old me. You must talk about a specific type of cancer. In the Dear 16-Year-Old Me video, they're talking about melanoma, which is one of the most preventable common cancers in children, kids your age. You must talk about an action that causes the cancer you're talking about to be more common. You must make a specific reference to a cultural demographic. So African Canadians or South Asians or Northern Europeans, some of these cultural groups are more likely to get a cancer based on their genes, based on their genetics. And if you're not comfortable focusing on your cultural demographic, then pick one and just let us know which one you're focusing on. Some cancers are more common in biological females. Some, clearly, ovarian cancer would be one of those. And some cancers are more common in biological males. clearly prostate cancer, which is attached to the male reproductive system, would be one of those. So talk about your cancer. Is there any preponderance or likelihood that it's more common in one biological sex than the other? And are there any specific actions you can take to reduce the risk of that indicated cancer? If you watch the Dear 16-Year-Old Me, they do an excellent job of hitting these points. So you can include any personal anecdotes from your family. If this is too challenging or difficult for you because you have, you're very close to a cancer story right now, and you're not able to complete this without, feeling really bad about yourself and the situation, then just let me know and we can figure out something else for you to work on. But you might find this cathartic and a really good activity if you are close to it, because you might want to get the story out to other people and help them, avoid the cancer. So that's your activity for the week. And you'll find this as a Google Doc in the course site. You'll complete it as one for each of you. You are allowed to work on anything on here with a partner. You could even work on this Dear 14-Year-Old Me with a partner. If you want to take 2 or 3 of you, like the Dear 16-Year-Old Me video did, they took 10, 12 people, and they're all sharing their stories and was stitched together. If you want to do something like that, then by all means, please do. It'll make it much more exciting. But if you want to do it by yourself, which is probably easier, then that's fine as well. You'll be uploading this to Padlet. Right? So this is our Padlet from our course. But on Padlet, what you'll be doing is you'll be creating something, and then you'll be adding it here. So you can notice the things. You can add a voice for a podcast, a screencast. You can draw something, a snap. You can add a link. You can upload a video. So as long as you can upload to the Padlet. And then we're going to do a gallery walk. So on Friday, we're going to walk around virtually around the Padlet. You're going to look at everyone else's. You must comment on at least 2 other people's, and that's the activity. So once again, it will be a completion activity, and this will help prepare you for your final task in a couple of weeks.